They make some claims and they're very easy to refute.
Let's go through his arguments point by point. The first argument he makes is that God can't humble himself because it does not befit his majesty. I've already argued that it is befitting of God's moral attributes to humble himself in a past video, so I won't repeat those arguments here. The next point is he asked me if God can get horny. This is a common style of argument from Muslims against the Incarnation. They say something along the lines of, but that means God got horny, or that means God pooped, and so on. But here's a problem with this style of argument. If you object to the Incarnation because it entails that God experienced some bodily function, then that implies that these bodily functions are intrinsically bad in some way. But these functions are things God designed us to do, which means you are saying God intentionally designed us to do things that are bad in some way. Now, going back to the original question, yes, I think Jesus felt physical sexual desires, but because he was sinless, I don't think he engaged in lustful thoughts or actions. Next, several Old Testament verses are cited which indicate that God is not a man. Yes, I agree, God in his eternal divine nature is fundamentally not a man. Christians think that Jesus has two natures, a divine nature and a human nature. At the time those verses were written, the Incarnation had not happened, so I think those are in reference to the eternal divine nature. Next, my opponent cites 1 Kings 8:27, suggesting that God can't dwell on earth, and in this regard, my opponent is being dishonest or lazy or maybe both. The person talking in this passage is Solomon. God told David that Solomon would build a house for him to dwell in, see 1 Chronicles 22, and Solomon in his reign as king says, okay, it's time to build God's house, also known as the temple. The temple was where God's name dwelt among the Israelites. In the Old Testament, when we see God reference my name, it's a way of referring to his presence, and we are repeatedly told that this temple is built for the name of the Lord. See 1 Kings 8:16-21. So Solomon is told specifically to build a house for the presence of God to dwell in. In the section referenced by my opponent, Solomon has finished building the temple and is now dedicating the house to God. With all this in mind, let's read this section quoted against me in context, starting with verse 26. Quote, "Now therefore, O God of Israel, let your word be confirmed, which you have spoken to your servant David, my father. But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, heaven and the highest heaven cannot contain you. How much less this house that I have built? Yet have regard to the prayer of your servant and to his plea, O Lord my God, listening to the cry and to the prayer that your servant prays before you this day, that your eyes may be open night and day toward this house, the place of which you have said, my name shall be there, that you may listen to the prayer that your servant offers towards this place." End quote. Context is everything, my friends. Now, my opponent later makes the claim that Genesis 32 is saying Jacob wrestled with an angel, not with God. I recently made an entire video refuting this claim, so I will refer him to that. The last claim my opponent made that I have not addressed in this video is the claim regarding the Torah not being preserved. I don't have enough time remaining to say everything I want to say regarding that in this video, so I will be releasing a second part dedicated specifically to that objection.